Greetings from sunny summer Dallas, Texas. On a beautiful day, we're looking at about 93 degrees today, and I hope the weather is good where you are. And even if it's not, you can still have a good time playing the clarinet. I wanted in this video to sort of complete the idea about breaking in reeds that I began talking about previously. Now, obviously, as you break the reed in, as you play it, and it gets more conditioned to your mouthpiece and to your way of playing, it's going to change, or what you might perceive as changed. But the fact is that maybe your first testing and first balancing wasn't really as good as you thought it was, so you may have to go back and refine the reed a little bit more, which means do really quite a bit less to it than you had to do previously when you balanced the reed. That's pretty standard operating procedure. But how do you stabilize the reed and minimize any kind of adjustments that need to be done? And the answer is to properly store the reed. Now, before we talk about how to store the reed and why you store it a particular way, I want to show you a way that you should not store the reed. And here it is. Right here, this guy. Isn't that pretty? This is boutique clarinet. It really is. And you can put all those reeds on there and you can open them up and they'll look really pretty. There's just a problem, and that is they won't play. You'll have to wet them up. You have to wait until they get sort of stable and any crinkly stuff there in the tip of the reed is kind of leveled out and gone. And then you can think about playing them. It's not a good idea. And the reason is because when you finish the reed and balance it and everything, you want to keep it in an extremely stable environment. That's very close, an environment that keeps the reed very close to actually being playable. So you pull it out and it plays. I know Harold Wright said that he stored his reeds so that as soon as he pulled them out, they played. They were ready to play. And I think that's really the best advice. Putting the reed so it's experiencing the extremes of dryness and wetness, is a way to destabilize the reed and cause all kinds of problems, even on the flat table, which I recommend that you never really touch. If a reed warps on the flat side, it's going to warp again. So just take those reeds in the backyard and shoot them, or that's what we do in Texas. We do that to them. So what is the best way to store reeds? If you're not going to store them and do all this boutique clarinet stuff, how do you do that? Well, keep them stable. And how do you do that? Well, right there's my answer. And it's not a fancy answer. It's an inexpensive answer. But I think it really is the answer. Now, there's one problem with this, though. And it's a bad problem. It's called mold. Because when you keep something wet, it's going to get moldy. And all that black stuff, it's not really appealing. It's probably not very healthy for you to put in your mouth, right? So how do you prevent that? Well, I knew a saxophone player, I'm going to pull this out. I knew a saxophone player who kept his reeds very wet. I mean very wet. And what he did was he used what he called Dr. Tishner's, some kind of mouthwash or something. And the mouthwash kept the reeds from being moldy. Now, I haven't looked into Dr. Tishner's or any of the other mouthwashes, so commercial mouthwashes, so I don't really know how safe they are or whatever. And people are always concerned about that nowadays. But I do keep my reeds wet, and they stay very wet, and they're ready to play for the most part. There you go, and you can see. I don't know if you can see those guys. They're really damp. But you'll notice that there's no mold here. And yet I don't use any of that stuff. So what do? Well, first of all, I keep the reeds in this bag, and I have a sponge that's nice and wet. So the environment inside this plastic bag is very stable all the time. But I also spray the reeds. And I spray the reeds with what looks like just a regular bottle of water. But this is not water. What I use, and you may have something better, so I'll be interested to hear what you have to say. But what I use is hydrogen peroxide. Now, if you're not familiar with that, this is kind of an all-purpose substance. People use it to gargle. People use it to brush their teeth. Hollywood blondes use it to make them platinum blondes. And it's quite a disinfectant. I remember getting in a motorcycle wreck when I was at a music camp in the summer in North Carolina years ago, and I still have from the road there. I still have some North Carolina embedded under my arm, where the motorcycle wrecked, and I skidded on my arm for a while. It was the one thing that wasn't protected. And so when I got back to the camp, the nurse took hydrogen peroxide and sprayed it on my arm, and the peroxide bubbled out a lot of the North Carolina road dirt to keep things from getting infected. So I've used hydrogen peroxide quite a while. I usually brush my teeth with it in combination with baking soda and do any number of things. And generally speaking, gargling with it, it's a very safe substance. Now, if you know of a better substance, as I said, share it with us, okay? But this helps keep my reeds very, very wet so that they play as soon as I pull them out, and they're in a stable environment all the time. Sometimes they get a little drier because I'm just not playing very much. I have so much to do now that I don't have time to practice, so I'm not playing consistently every day and checking my reeds. But this I found to be one of the best possible ways to keep your reeds. Doing this in combination with well balancing your reeds is going to make you able to play your reeds in all kinds of different environments. I remember going from Dallas here up to Utah from what we're just about maybe 500 feet elevation, or maybe even not that, up to 6,000, 6,500, and playing a concert. And my reeds played great up there. And guys were coming from elevations of 2,000, 3,000 feet, going up to 6,000 and complaining because their reeds were playing so badly. Well, why was that? Mainly, it was because their reeds weren't properly balanced in the first place. The less well balanced the reed is, the more it's going to exhibit some variable response and resistance when it's put in a different environment. The better balanced the reed is, the more consistently it's going to play. And if you do that, if you balance the reed and keep it, in a consistent environment, it's going to play well for you all over the place. And when I was with LeBlanc, I'd travel to every corner of the country, sometimes in one trip. I would go to the East Coast, go to the West Coast, go down to Florida, go up into the higher areas, higher elevations. And my reeds played great everywhere. I never had any problems. So these things, at least in my experience, this worked out really well for me. And I'm going to recommend that, you try this and see how it works. And if anyone has a better method, please tell us, because we're always looking for things that are going to help our reeds play more and more consistently over the lifetime of the reed. Now, one other comment about balancing the reed. As I said, at the outset, you should balance the reed. And a lot of people say, well, Tom, I don't know why you should do that because, the reed's going to change and everything. It's true. The reed is going to change as you play it in, as the reed gets more conditioned toward to the mouthpiece and, the way you play. But the fact is that in playing the reed after you balance it well, you put less and less stress on it as the reed basically plays in to your situation than you would if you were playing that reed and trying to force it into working and trying to breaking it down before you actually do any balancing. And balancing it first minimizes any work and any refinement you'll need to do later on. So please consider doing that. Don't mollycoddle your reed and hope that somehow it's going to magically transform into a balanced reed without balancing it, because it's not. There's no method that you can use. There's no method of storage that you can use that's going to balance that reed. There are methods of storage that are going to help the reed play more consistently once you balance it, but you got to balance it. And then when you store it this way, you're going to find it plays very consistently. Now, I'm going to pull these reeds out. They haven't been played for, I don't know, a couple weeks, and we're going to see how they play. So this is the reed I balanced yesterday. Well, it's pretty stable. Sometimes people ask me what reeds I use, and my answer is always balanced reeds. And I find lots of good cane from different makers. It plays pretty much the way it did. Okay. This is a Glotan reed from a box that I think is about 20 years old. Okay, well that plays. Can't remember that passage. Been a long time since I played it. Okay, that's reed number 2. And let's see what this is. Another Regatti reed. This reed is a reed that's it's over 20 years old. And so if you've got reeds that are unbalanced, don't worry about the age, they will play. think I need to move this up a little bit on the mouthpiece. So you get the idea, though, that every reed here will play, and I can immediately test it and see how it's going to play that day. So then, when I finish, I'm going to spray these guys on both sides. Well, I don't know. Let's you have trouble getting these things out of the thing once. Well, we'll try one more on the other side. This is actually a Van Doren. Play all kinds of brands of reeds. I like Rigotti's the best because the cane seems the best. I like the tone quality of the cane. You can balance any reed and make it play, the best that it can. I want it to be have a little more blowback, so move it up slightly. When the reed's well balanced, you can move it around on the mouthpiece and it'll play consistently. But if it's not well balanced, you move it and it's a disaster. That's a little better, but you see they play right out of the box and they'll stay consistent and pretty much free of mold if you keep them like this. So if you're performing a lot, which I'm not, because I don't play at all, but if you're performing a lot, I think this method and this way of doing things is going to help you. To review, this is boutique clarinet. Forget about boutique clarinet. It looks pretty, but it doesn't really serve you. It doesn't really work. Rather, stay with what works best for actual performance, not that which looks great. Obviously, this doesn't look very professional when you pull it out of your case, but it works professional, and that's the thing that counts, and it's always the thing that counts. It's always the bottom line. So keep that in mind. In the meantime, what's left of the weekend, I hope you enjoy it.